5 cruiser bikes riders are dumping in 2025. Machines once iconic, now headaches even mechanics warn against. If you own one, the truth may sting. Stay tuned, because the #1 bike could cost you thousands. Watch till the end. Missing this list might be your biggest regret. Number 5. Harley-Davidson Sportster, 883. For decades, few machines carried the weight of tradition like the Sportster. Riders young and old saw it as the most accessible way to buy into the Harley lifestyle, a motorcycle that was small enough to handle but still carried the look and sound of a full-sized American cruiser. Beneath its stripped-down frame sat an 883 cubic centimeter Evolution V-twin that produced close to 50 horsepower and 55 pound-feet of torque. A single disc in the front and another in the rear gave the Sportster modest stopping confidence for riders stepping into their first real cruiser. Carrying a wet weight near 560 pounds, it balanced low stance with telescopic forks and twin shocks. The 29.9-inch seat made it approachable for nearly anyone. One new owner recalled riding proudly to his first rally, only to battle aching knees after just 100 miles. The history of the Sportster stretches back generations, and that heritage is part of what made the later years so frustrating for loyal riders. This was a motorcycle that once symbolized rebellion and independence, a bike that carried countless young riders through their first long trips. By the 2010s, however, the weight of emissions rules, parts cost, and outdated engineering left it lagging behind the expectations of a modern audience. The tension between its historic image and present-day reality only amplified the disappointment. Owners often describe the ownership experience as a cycle of hope followed by letdown. A new battery here, an upgraded regulator there, even careful oil checks could not mask the fact that small failures added up quickly. The pattern left many riders constantly looking over their shoulder, unsure if the next ride would end with a roadside call for help. Some kept the bike for nostalgia's sake, but for most, it simply became too much to justify. Even the used market tells the story. While older carbureted versions from the 1990s still hold steady demand, the more recent 883 models regularly sit unsold. Dealers quietly admit they move these bikes slowly, often only to brand new riders who are still caught up in the idea of Harley ownership rather than the reality of maintenance costs. But beneath the badge and the thumping rhythm, cracks began to show. Owners discovered electrical gremlins hiding in the charging systems, voltage regulators that failed long before expected, and oil seepage that marked driveways across America. Mechanics noted that once these bikes crossed into middle mileage, the top end often began to rattle, and repairs stretched beyond what resale value could support. The Sportster carried a reputation for being simple, but by the 2010s, simplicity had been replaced by compromises, leaving many riders facing shop visits that felt anything but affordable. Those who had purchased it as a first taste of Harley ownership often found themselves trading out quickly, frustrated that the bike designed to keep them loyal had instead become a short stop on the road to something more reliable. What makes this story sting even more is the emotional side of the equation. The Sportster was never meant to be a disposable motorcycle. It was supposed to be the ironclad starter that created lifelong Harley riders. Yet by 2025, countless examples sit unsold, their owners unwilling to invest further in a machine that demanded more than it gave back. The sense of pride once tied to parking one outside a diner has shifted into quiet regret, with many riders admitting they wish they had stepped up to a larger, more durable model from the start. The lesson is clear. Even the most iconic entry-level Harley can lose its grip when design and dependability do not keep pace with expectations. And while the Sportster once symbolized accessibility, today it has become a reminder that low cost at the beginning can often mean higher expense down the road. The next motorcycle on this list shows that even when a brand tries to challenge Harley at its own game, the results can leave riders just as disappointed. If you've owned one of these bikes or battled the same problems, drop your story in the comments. And if you're finding this breakdown useful, hit that subscribe button. It helps more riders avoid the same expensive mistakes. Number 4. Yamaha Bolt. When the cruiser market was heating up in the 2010s, a new contender arrived that many riders thought could finally shake Harley's grip on the entry-level scene. The Bolt stepped onto the stage with stripped-down styling and promises of reliable Japanese engineering at an attractive price point. At the heart of the Bolt was a 942 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin delivering about 53 horsepower and 57 pound-feet of torque. A single front disc and a single rear disc managed braking, modest but dependable for a lightweight cruiser. Balancing that power, the bike used telescopic forks and twin shocks to support a wet weight near 545 pounds. With its 27.2-inch seat height, it sat low and approachable. One Arizona rider recalled scorching summer trips where the Bolt's simplicity thrilled him, until charging issues left him stranded outside Tucson. The Bolt's biggest weakness was not only its quirks, but also its lack of long-term vision. Yamaha introduced it as a stripped-down alternative to the established cruiser scene, but it failed to evolve or address early complaints. By the time later models arrived, the competition had already stepped ahead with stronger technology, smoother engines, and features like anti-lock braking systems that riders began to expect as standard. The Bolt looked cool in a catalog, but in practice it felt half a step behind. One of the most telling aspects is how the bike was received in rider communities. Early adopters praised its affordability and styling, yet within a few years, the conversation shifted toward reliability issues and awkward ergonomics. Tall riders posted photos of cramped riding positions, while others shared stories of roadside failures that left them second-guessing their purchase. It was not catastrophic in the way some larger cruisers failed, but the steady drip of complaints chipped away at its reputation. Today, the Bolt rarely commands pride of ownership. It is remembered more as an experiment than a true contender. For many, it became a stepping stone, kept for a short season before being traded in for something with more character and confidence on the open road. The excitement, however, did not last. What owners quickly discovered was that the Bolt was not the bulletproof alternative it was billed to be. Charging system issues cropped up far earlier than expected, with stators and regulators leaving bikes stranded at the side of the road. Belt drive alignment problems left riders chasing adjustments that never seemed to hold, and starter relays became notorious for failure. These problems were compounded by an uncomfortable riding position that forced taller riders into cramped knees and aching backs after only short rides. Many who thought they had found a reliable long-term cruiser were left facing bills that rivaled the very machines they were trying to avoid, while resale values sagged as word spread. The real blow came in the intangible category, the one that matters most to seasoned riders, the feeling of pride. The Bolt delivered decent looks but lacked the soul riders expected from a cruiser. Owners described it as sterile, missing that deep connection they wanted when they fired it up at dawn for a long ride. Forums once filled with enthusiasm turned into message boards of complaints, and by the end of its production window, the bike was more often seen collecting dust in garages than carving highways. Those who had invested their hopes in the promise of Japanese simplicity found themselves quietly moving on, often trading up for bigger machines with more presence and fewer headaches. This story is a reminder that style and price are never enough to build lasting loyalty. A cruiser must blend reliability, comfort, and heritage into a package that stands the test of time, and when it falls short, riders do not forgive easily. The Bolt stands as proof that even with the right ingredients on paper, the final product can leave owners disappointed and mechanics shaking their heads. The next motorcycle on this list shows that even a brand long associated with bulletproof dependability can stumble, leaving riders questioning whether reputation alone is reason enough to trust a machine. If a bike can let you down, your gear shouldn't. Ride with protection and comfort you can trust. Link is in the description. Number 3. Honda Shadow Phantom. In the world of middleweight cruisers, there was a time when the Phantom carried an air of quiet confidence. It looked the part with its blacked-out styling and low stance, promising a blend of Japanese dependability with American cruiser attitude. Powering the Phantom was a 745 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin, producing 44 horsepower and 47 pound-feet of torque. The new models have a single front disc and rear disc handled braking, a setup that suited the bike's stripped-down, old-school appeal. Supporting a wet weight of 549 pounds, it used telescopic forks and twin shocks. The seat height sat at 25.7 inches, keeping it approachable. One Midwest rider remembered cold mornings when the Phantom's stubborn idle forced him to carry tools, turning every fuel stop into a roadside adjustment ritual. The Phantom's story is especially disappointing because Honda's reputation for bulletproof reliability created expectations it simply could not meet. Riders who trusted the brand discovered quirks that felt out of place, and while none of them alone might have been deal breakers, together they created a pattern of frustration. That pattern was enough to tarnish a nameplate that should have been a safe haven in the midweight cruiser segment. Longtime mechanics noticed how many Phantoms arrived at shops for relatively small but consistent issues: fuel delivery concerns, noisy cam chains, or electrical hiccups that wore down owner patience. Riders do not mind the occasional repair, but when the same problems repeat themselves and parts are slow to arrive, faith in the machine quickly erodes. For those who wanted to log thousands of miles in comfort, the Phantom proved too demanding. In the used market, the Phantom tells another story. Bargain hunters see low prices, but seasoned buyers know those prices reflect years of unresolved frustrations. While other Honda cruisers of earlier eras remain desirable, the Phantom has become a bike many walk past, recognizing that reliability is more than just a logo on the tank. Despite that promising foundation, owners soon began to uncover the hidden flaws that made long-term ownership less than ideal. The fueling system was notorious for cold start frustrations, a problem that seemed out of place in the second decade of the 21st century when most competitors had already moved confidently into advanced fuel injection. Riders often complained about unpredictable idling and flat spots in power delivery that undercut the smooth cruising they expected. Mechanics noted premature wear on cam chain tensioners, an issue that turned what should have been a dependable ride into a gamble once the mileage climbed past midlife. For a bike marketed as a worry-free option, those discoveries chipped away at the very trust that had drawn buyers in. Beyond the mechanical frustrations, the Phantom carried a deeper weakness in the emotional experience it delivered. With its subdued output and heavier weight compared to its modest engine size, it felt sluggish and uninspiring to riders who craved more connection between throttle and road. Owners who had hoped for a spirited yet practical machine often described the ride as numb, lacking the visceral pulse that makes a cruiser worth keeping for the long haul. The blacked-out styling did its job in photographs, but once the novelty wore off, the reality was a machine that delivered more compromise than excitement. This gap between expectation and experience left many riders looking over the fence at machines that carried stronger character and more robust engineering. As the used market caught up with these realities, resale values fell faster than competitors, and the Phantom became a bike that dealers hesitated to take in trade. The promise of affordable ownership proved hollow when frustrated owners had to explain fueling quirks, nagging wear issues, and the lack of modern features such as anti-lock braking systems that were quickly becoming standard elsewhere. By the late 2010s, the Phantom was no longer viewed as a safe choice, but rather as an outdated model that struggled to keep pace with rising expectations. For riders weighing their options in 2025, the story of the Phantom is a cautionary tale. Dependability cannot rest on brand reputation alone, and styling can only carry a motorcycle so far when the ride itself feels compromised. The Phantom illustrates that even manufacturers with a strong legacy of reliability can stumble when they fail to innovate. And while the bike may still serve as a stepping stone for a small segment of buyers, it has largely become a symbol of missed potential. The next motorcycle on this list shows that even when a manufacturer attempts a bold return to the spotlight, Problems in design and execution can send owners running for the exit. Number 2. Indian Scout. Among modern cruisers that tried to balance heritage with contemporary performance, the Scout seemed destined for success. It arrived with bold styling, polished chrome accents, and the promise of reviving an American icon that could challenge Harley's dominance. Underneath its sleek lines, the Scout carried an 1133 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin, delivering about 100 horsepower and 72 pound-feet of torque. Disc brakes at both ends, with optional anti-lock braking system, gave riders confidence when pushing the bike's spirited personality. Balancing its muscle, telescopic forks and dual rear shocks supported a wet weight of 560 pounds. The 25.6-inch seat kept it low and approachable. One Colorado rider recalled mountain passes where the Scout's power thrilled him until a failed fuel pump cut the trip short in disappointment. The Scout's challenges highlight how even bold reinventions can falter when the small details are neglected. Indian gave the bike impressive horsepower and sharp looks, but they underestimated the importance of refinement and long-term support. The result was a motorcycle that delivered excitement in the short term, but wore thin as real-world problems piled up. Owners often describe the emotional arc as one of pride followed by fatigue. The first months were filled with compliments and excitement, but as shop visits mounted, that pride shifted into frustration. Riders wanted to love the bike. They had chosen it to stand apart from Harley and to support a brand steeped in history. But love turned to caution when repairs drained both time and money. Even today, discussions among owners tend to balance admiration for the Scout's design with warnings about its pitfalls. That split reputation makes it difficult to trust on the used market, where buyers fear inheriting the same electrical or transmission troubles that sent previous owners walking away. The Scout had every opportunity to be a landmark, but instead, it became a cautionary tale about overpromising and under-delivering. But real-world ownership revealed cracks in the foundation. The Scout developed a reputation for generating extreme heat around the legs during summer rides, often leaving owners with more discomfort than enjoyment on longer trips. Electrical gremlins were not uncommon, with reports of fuel pump failures and erratic instrument clusters showing up at mileages well under the expected range. Mechanics pointed to transmission complaints as well, with some riders experiencing missed shifts, false neutrals, or even gearbox lockups that left them stranded far from home. For a machine meant to inspire confidence, those problems chipped away at trust and left many riders questioning whether they had invested in a dependable cruiser or a flashy gamble. Beyond the technical failures, there was another challenge that undercut the Scout's staying power: parts availability and service costs. Owners often found themselves waiting weeks for critical components, a frustration compounded by limited dealership networks in rural areas. When repairs finally came, the bills were anything but light, frequently rivaling or surpassing the costs of Harley models that had stronger reputations for durability. Resale values began to slide as these issues became widely known, with once proud riders struggling to find buyers willing to pay fair prices for machines that had become associated with reliability concerns. The very excitement that helped the Scout gain quick popularity turned into disappointment when the reality of ownership proved more demanding than expected. The emotional fallout was equally significant. Many riders had chosen the Scout as a statement of independence, eager to support a brand that dared to stand against the Harley juggernaut. They wanted to believe they were riding a piece of revived American tradition, but instead they were left explaining constant shop visits to skeptical friends. Online communities once filled with pride began to share cautionary tales, with photos of torn-down engines and accounts of ruined road trips. That sense of brotherhood that should come with owning a proud American cruiser was overshadowed by frustration, and riders who once boasted about their purchase often moved quietly into different garages, unwilling to relive the disappointment. As 2025 approaches, the Scout remains a warning that even a motorcycle with strong specifications and historic branding can falter if the execution falls short. The bike proved that horsepower and good looks cannot replace long-term reliability, especially for older riders who value confidence above novelty. Mechanics continue to caution potential buyers about the risks, while former owners tell stories of wallets drained and dreams cut short. The Scout stands as a reminder that in the world of cruisers, true success requires more than flashy performance. It demands endurance and trust that lasts for decades. The final motorcycle on this list demonstrates this lesson even more sharply, as it involves one of the most beloved names in American touring whose flaws became impossible to ignore. We've still got the final and most shocking entry ahead, but before we get there, make sure you subscribe. Every day we bring the straight truth about the machines you ride and the ones to avoid. Don't miss it. Your next decision could save thousands. Number 1. Harley-Davidson twin-cam touring models. For many riders, the sound of a twin-cam engine rolling across the interstate once symbolized freedom and strength. These touring machines were the flagships of their era, carrying riders across the country with saddlebags full, windshields tall, and reputations built on decades of Harley heritage. Built for distance, the twin-cam touring lineup carried engines from 1,588 to 1,688 cubic centimeters, producing 65 to 80 horsepower with 92 to 102 pound-feet of torque. Dual discs with optional anti-lock braking system gave riders steady highway control. Supporting that muscle, air-adjustable rear shocks and conventional forks handled wet weights from 730 to 850 pounds. Seats averaged 27.3 inches for stability. One veteran recalled a cross-country trip cut short when a tensioner issue forced him to spend 3 nights stranded in Nebraska. The downfall of the twin-cam years reminds riders that even the biggest names in motorcycling are not immune to serious missteps. These bikes carried the responsibility of representing Harley on the grand stage, from coast-to-coast tours to veteran parades. For them to stumble so severely shook confidence across the rider community. Over time, the used market reflected this reputation. Prices dropped not only because of age, but also because of stigma. Many riders refused to consider twin-cam years at all, preferring to pay more for Milwaukee 8 models that corrected the old problems. In this way, the twin-cam generation serves as a reminder that loyalty must be earned with every engine, every mile, and every long road stretching out into the horizon. Yet behind the chrome and leather, the twin-cam generation carried problems so serious that mechanics across the country still warn about them today. The most infamous was the cam chain tensioner failure. Nylon shoes designed to manage timing chains wore down at shockingly low mileages, scattering debris through the oil system and starving bearings of lubrication. The result was a rattle that quickly turned into catastrophic internal damage if left unchecked. Owners who thought they had years of smooth touring ahead often found themselves facing repair bills of $3,000 to $6,000 for complete timing set replacements. Some ignored the early warning noises, only to face engine replacements costing over $10,000, an expense that dwarfed the value of many well-used bikes. Oil pump weaknesses added to the frustration. The stock designs in the earlier twin-cam years struggled to maintain consistent pressure once debris entered the system. Crankshaft runout was another hidden danger, with tolerances shifting over time until vibration and excessive wear left engines shaking and bearings failing. Mechanics often described opening these engines as discovering a trail of hidden compromises, each small failure leading to larger and more expensive ones. For a touring motorcycle that demanded trust over long distances, such flaws became a betrayal that no marketing campaign could repair. Beyond the technical failures, the twin-cam models carried emotional consequences that cut even deeper. Riders who invested their savings into what they believed were lifelong machines found themselves stranded on cross-country trips, their dreams of open highways replaced with tow trucks and motel parking lots. Entire online communities formed around documenting failures, sharing repair photos, and warning new buyers to steer clear. The sense of pride in owning a flagship Harley was shaken. replaced by an uneasy awareness that even the most celebrated touring machines could fall short of the brand's promise. Stories circulated of riders selling beloved bikes at a loss rather than risk another round of repairs. The heartbreak was not only financial but personal, tied to the deep bond riders expected to last decades. The arrival of the Milwaukee 8 in 2017 marked a turning point. With redesigned oiling systems, stronger crankshafts, and a focus on solving the very problems that plagued the twin cam, Harley attempted to reclaim rider confidence. And while the newer generation largely succeeded, the scars left by the earlier years remain clear in the used market. Twin-cam touring bikes from 2007 through 2016 often appear at lower prices, but seasoned riders know those deals can mask hidden repair costs that run into 5 figures. Mechanics still approach them cautiously, offering blunt warnings. A bargain up front can quickly become an anchor on your wallet. For riders considering these machines in 2025, the lesson is unmistakable. Touring motorcycles must be built on trust, and when that trust is broken, the damage lingers long after the engines are rebuilt. The twin-cam generation stands as both a cautionary tale and a reminder of how even legendary names can stumble when design flaws outweigh heritage. The machines that once carried flags across parades and thundered down endless highways now serve as warnings in service bays. And as riders look to the future, they carry with them the knowledge that specifications alone are not enough. A true touring motorcycle must deliver confidence with every mile. Every rider deserves the truth, not marketing promises. If this countdown opened your eyes, share it with a fellow rider who needs the warning. Hit like if you found value and drop your own experiences in the comments. We read them all. Most importantly, subscribe now. Together, we'll keep uncovering the motorcycles worth your trust and those that can quietly rob you of money, miles, and peace of mind.